Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda and today I have for you my September reading wrap-up. So for the whole month of September, I participated in the Shop Your Shelves challenge hosted by Paige over at Creating & Co. And essentially this was just a challenge that you read the books that you already own physically or are on your TBR in whatever way. Like if you're a library reader, it could just be the books that you have on hold or that you want to read from the library, things like that. So surprisingly, I only read one book that was off my shelf, but the rest have been on my Goodreads TBR for a while. And in order to kind of keep track of what everyone was reading in our group goal, we set a shelf on our Goodreads, and then you were able to say how many books you wanted to read in the month. I was planning to read 10 books. I didn't quite hit my goal, but we'll get to that later. And so then it was not only a personal effort, but a group effort to kind of reach the goal that you had set. There was also tiered prizes and freebies that Paige gave out once we hit certain percentages. I know we got, actually I've got it right here. The first freebie was this downloadable kind of library receipt sort of thing that I printed on sticker paper and put in my bullet journal, and it's just keeping track of the titles that you read throughout the month as well as the amount you saved by reading books you already own versus new releases. So for me, I mostly just took the paperback price off Amazon, typically the sale price, because I buy most of my books either on Amazon or through a local used bookstore, or I just read audiobooks from my library and such like that. But that was one of the prizes, which was pretty cool. So let's get on to the stats before I keep rambling about the Shop Your Shelves challenge. So the first book I read was a book I had left over from August. It was actually a group read during the Discover New Worlds readathon that was hosted by Creating & Co. And this book was Soulless. I had read 194 pages at the time, so I had 210 left, which I did finish at the beginning of this month. I read it on my Kindle, and I gave it a 3-star rating overall. It was a good book. It was pretty decent. It is the first book in a series, and Gail Carriger, I believe, writes all in the same kind of world or universe that she's created. I read her finishing school series maybe 3 years ago, I want to say, through my library, and I really enjoyed that series. And so the Parasol Protectorate series, which Soulless is the first book in, takes place about 25 years after that time period, and you've got some overlap in characters. There's definitely familiar names, and other than that, it's just a very familiar world. So I enjoyed that, but it was definitely quite adult, and where I really liked the charms and whimsy and like steampunk elements of the finishing school, I didn't really feel like I got that in the Parasol Protectorate. So it'll be interesting as I read more of the series to kind of see if any of that comes out or if it just kind of stays more adult in its nature, but we'll see. So I enjoyed it, but it was just kind of a middle of the road read for me. So the next book I read was a buddy read with my friend Darshell over at Books and Planners, who I actually met through the Creating & Co. Facebook book club group, and we've been working on reading the Shadowhunters books since I think February is when we started with City of Bones. So we're up to, we actually read City of Fallen Angels and City of Lost Souls this month. So City of Fallen Angels was an audiobook read for me through my library that was 12 hours and 39 minutes, and I gave it a 2-star rating. I might as well just jump down now to City of Lost Souls. That one was 16 hours and 59 minutes that I also gave a 2-star rating. If I'm completely honest, I don't remember what happened in City of Fallen Angels. A little bit. But basically, City of Lost Souls, it's just Darshell and I are both at the point where we're just kind of tired of the story, but we're very determined to finish the series. And the thing for me is, I really don't like Clary, which is a problem because she's like the main character of the Mortal Instruments. And I just think she's so strong-headed and stubborn, and she never learns from her past mistakes, and she just does everything for Jason. It's like, you could be such a strong female character if you weren't so boy crazy, but she is. So we've got one more book left in the Mortal Instruments, and then we'll move into the Bane Chronicles, I think, and then the Dark Artifices, I think, is next. So we'll see how that goes. But those two were just kind of flops for me. The next book I read was an anthology, and it was Summer Days and Summer Nights, which was edited by Stephanie Perkins. I read this on my Kindle, and it was 400 pages. I gave it a 3-star rating, and I have notes of what my favorite stories were. So these are stories that I gave either a 4 or 5-star to. I liked Inertia by Veronica Roth, Brand New Attraction by Cassandra Clare, A Thousand Ways This Could All Go Wrong by Jennifer E. Smith, and The Map of Tiny Perfect Things by Lev Grossman. So they were 4-star, 4-star, 5-star, 4-star. I thought it was all right, but I don't know. I'm not a big anthology person, and I wasn't. They were all set during summer, and I guess I was kind of expecting them to all be contemporary stories, but some were definitely more like magical fantasy stories or more like magical realism stories, and I guess I wasn't expecting that when I went in to read this anthology, because then others were like straight contemporaries. So I was a little confused while I was reading it. I wasn't sure what the point of it was other than to tell stories all set during summer. So it was all right, but I don't think it was probably the best anthology for me to start with, but it's done. It's in the past now. And then the next book I read was Xenocide by Orson Scott Card. I have a physical copy of this. I have a physical copy of all the books, but I did listen to this through my library. It was 20 hours and 10 minutes, and I gave it a 2-star rating. Basically, just like Speaker for the Dead. This follows right after the events of Speaker for the Dead. And I guess what leaves me a little disappointed is I wanted more about Ender after the military training school and the academy and things like that. This deals with characters we know as adults and different planets and kind of alien life forms, and finding out if they are sentient or not, if they're intentionally harming other populations and things like that. I think I liked this slightly more than Speaker for the Dead, just because I was prepared for the story this was telling, versus when I went into Speaker for the Dead, I had a completely different notion of what the book would be like. So this was all right. I think I like the character dynamics a bit more in this. But other than that, I guess probably because the world was already built up, it fell pretty flat on world building. The atmosphere just wasn't there for me, and I don't know. It didn't hit the mark that I wanted it to. So I'm a little disappointed, but it gets me one book closer to being able to finish that series, which is part of my overall goals for 2019 for reading, to finish a couple of the series I've started on my bookshelves. So I only have one book left for the Ender Saga, and we'll see if maybe next year I decide to tackle the books that follow Bean or not. I don't know. We'll see. So next book I have is The Paper Magician, which was 226 pages. I read this on my Kindle as well, and I gave it a 3-star rating. It was a pretty high 3-star rating if I remember correctly. And This book I picked up because I was going to Austin for work and I knew I wanted to pick up a book that I had had on my Kindle for a while because that's typically the time when I read from my Kindle is when I'm traveling. I'm trying to get better about that, but the books aren't as in my face because they hide away a lot easier than these things do. But I wanted a kind of short book to read because I knew a lot of my reading time would be on the airplane. And I kind of was hoping to finish this on the ride down, but ended up falling asleep at some point. So I didn't have as much reading time as I had hoped for. But I really enjoyed this book. I thought the atmosphere and the world building of it was great. It follows this main character named Xena who goes to school for magic. And the magic is you can manipulate man-made elements. So you've got people who can manipulate like plastic and glass and ballistics and also paper. So Siene ends up becoming an apprentice to a paper magician, and his house is just so cool sounding. Like it's like a paper cut waiting to happen. Everything's covered in like these intricately folded paper things, and he can kind of like breathe life into them and make them come alive. So it's a bit about her struggle and desiring a future in ballistics. But once you bind with one element, I guess, you're bound to it for life, so you can't change it. So there's also a kind of different story that goes on with an excisioner who is somebody who is bound with like how to describe it. She can manipulate like the blood in your body and like bones and things like that. So it's a really, really bad sort of thing to have. It's really dark magic. And she ends up doing something not so good to Siene's magician that she's an apprentice under, and Siene has to fix things. So I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the character dynamics together. I thought they worked really well. It made sense, like plot-wise and logistically, as kind of a magic system. You don't get a lot of background into the magic system, but it still isn't like, well, okay, but you know, how do you actually breathe life into a paper bird and it flies? I thought it had a lot of whimsy in it, but it also was very kind of like realism based. So I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see where the trilogy goes. I did start The Glass Magician. I only got 16 pages in, so it's going to be my goal to finish it in October. But I do really want to know how the story progresses. And then I also listened to On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan. This was a 4-hour and 29-minute audiobook. I gave a 3-star rating. Overall, it was a decent book, but I think it was definitely one of those books that translates better to film than it actually does to paper. Because I remember, well, not, I know when I flew back home from Scotland or to Scotland. It was one of those. I watched On Chesil Beach on the plane ride. And I really liked the story of it. It kind of angered me a bit. Just with how, oh, and I'm not even in Florence, treated her marriage. And I guess I kind of understood more of it with the writing and the text because there was a bit of an interview with Ian McEwan afterwards. So it made sense why she was so uncomfortable with the other aspects of marriage that I guess in the 1940s or 1950s it wasn't as like open to talk about. So I did enjoy the film quite a bit, and basically the book was just another way to tell the story, obviously, but it didn't like offer much new information that the film offered. So like I said, I think it was just one of those that translated really well to film. And it was a decent book. So it was all right. That's my second Ian McEwan book for the year, which is pretty cool, I guess. And then that brings us to the end because I already talked about City of Lost Souls. So as a total, I read 6 books this month. Nope, 7 books. I can do math. And no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books. Yep, I counted correctly the first time. But it was a pretty low month for me, I guess, rating wise. I didn't have anything above a 3, and I had 3 2-star ratings. So it's not the best of months, but I did get some more books checked off of my TBR list that I wanted to get to at some point, which is pretty good. So total pages read was 852, and I think this is probably one of my lowest times for audiobooks, but it was 54 hours and 17 minutes. And then my average star rating was 2.6, which, as I said, isn't super surprising because of the 3 2-stars and just 4 3-stars. So I'm hoping next month is a better reading month. We'll see. I've got some more buddy reads planned. I've got readathons planned. And I'm excited to just see what my next month holds reading-wise. We've got 3 months left, so definitely plan to check off and finish some more of those series that I've started, as well as read some of the books that have been, I guess, backlisted on my bookshelves for quite some time. So I would love to know what your favorite read was for the month. If you've read any of the books that I have, just whatever you want to chat about down in the comments, and I will speak with you there until my next video. Bye!